Diablo Cody's script is perfect, so if I didn't do anything and just said the words, it would be good enough. So I first became part of Lisa Frankenstein when I had a meeting with our director, Zelda. And we just had a general Zoom after I read the script, and I didn't even see myself in the role. Like, I had no idea how to approach this character. It felt like a no-brainer, and it also felt like something that I was so scared of. And Zelda just made me feel like she wanted to do something. She wanted to bring back the unreal reality. The thing Zelda brings to this project is her genuine groundedness. She's so grounded in the moment with me, with everyone, that I just feel like nothing I'm doing is being missed. I feel like she's enhancing me and bringing so much to this role with me, and I really do think she's the love and the heart of this movie. Zelda would give me, I'm sure, as many takes as I'd want, but I'm sure she'd cut me off at a certain point because she knows when she got what she needs. And we're dealing with gold here. I really noticed that Zelda picks up on what you're trying to do, and then she pulls it out of you more, which just means she's watching. She's really in the moment. She's not too far ahead. She's thinking about every little detail, and she doesn't miss it. So when I feel like I missed it, but she says, no, we got it, I believe her. And she always lets me do another one if I ask for a fun one or if I want to try something, because it's so important on a movie set that's moving really quickly, and we don't have that much time to make sure you at least feel the opportunity and space to play, because we find a lot of gold. I have really enjoyed working with Zelda. I hope that we get to create something again, because I trust her, and she's fun and cool. And that's really all you want, is someone you can just trust. And I am really throwing myself down on this movie. I am doing some crazy stuff, like just embarrassing things that you have to know are going to be okay. I can't believe I'm in a Diablo Cody movie. Like, there's just all these movies that she's done that I don't even realize is the same person. And then you read a script like Lisa Frankenstein, and it's like nothing she's ever done. And yet I think it's like the purest version of her. I don't know. The thing about Diablo style for me is the words. There's little alliterations. It's the kind of dialogue that I never want to mess up. Lisa Swallows is her name, is this girl who isn't heard. She doesn't speak up. She doesn't love herself very much. She doesn't think she matters very much. She's been through a lot of trauma. And she brings this guy from the dead, this Victorian man, who knows how old he is, and is finally heard for the first time. It changes everything about her, the fact that someone listens. I always pictured Lisa as this, like, girl who, like, man repeller vibes, like, has no sense of style, comfort over cute, just be comfortable grandma, and probably wears a lot of her mom's clothes because she misses her mother, but just doesn't want to be noticed. Is so hurt and, like, shy that she would rather she didn't bring any attention to herself, because it's just easier to get through the day if no one even looks at you. I love Liza. She is just a gift to the world, this girl. She's the sweetest girl I've ever met in my whole life, and there is nobody that could play this role except her, because she's such a sweet human, and Taffy is really like a sideways human, kind of sweet, kind of terrible. You're not really sure, but there's nothing about Liza that's not perfect and sweet. So working with her has been a lesson, because she's so professional. She's like blowing me and Cole out of the water, okay? This girl cries on command. She is funny on command, and she's always perfect. So working with her is so much fun. The most fun scene, well, Michael's death was a really good day. I come in and I'm screaming at Taffy, and I'm like, how could you take my guy? Like, that's one of my favorite lines, actually. One of my favorite lines of the movie is, and you just give it out like a cheese cube from Hickory Farms. And our Henry, who plays Michael, oh, he's fantastic. He's the perfect Michael. He could not get through it. As soon as I said cheese cube, he was like, and so I'm just yelling at both of them, and Henry's just dying laughing, and then Cole comes in with his axe. Like, who is this guy? He's acting like some Frank Sinatra man with his axe. It's so over, I just can't get through it. But my favorite scenes to shoot are with Cole. We're both very similar in that we want it to be the best. And it's great to like hop on a train that is a movie and get to hold hands with your scene partner, like Cole, and we're both along for the ride, and he's totally got my back. And like, he makes me feel like everything I do is good, you know? Even if it's not, he makes me feel like it is. So I'm very appreciative of the support. You know, I feel the same way about him. I guess we just think we're both really good. I think he's so perfect in this role. The physical comedy, he's working so hard. And it just comes across like, yeah, I'm just showing up. He never complains, never, no.
The first time I heard about the project, it was sent to me, and I read it and I fell in love with it. I've been a fan of Diablo Cody's for a long time. I love New Orleans. I came here for the first time about 3 years ago to film a movie, and I fell in love with the city. I think it's interesting. I think from what I have traveled of a lot of the continental U.S., a lot of it is pretty homogenous and can become, you know, this endless carnival of Rite Aids and strip malls. And New Orleans is one of those real gems of a city within the United States that has a very obvious cultural fingerprint. It's got this robust music scene, robust art scene, incredible food culture. It's a fully integrated city. It stays with you. I found out that my friend was attached to direct, Zelda, and Zelda and I have been really close for about 7 years. But funny enough, we never really talked about work because we were just kind of hanging out and having fun. I'm a very firm believer that one should work with their friends. Work with their friends closely. I think Zelda and I have had an established rapport and communication for the last 7 years. And I feel very privileged to be able to work alongside Zelda to bring her vision to life and to bring Diablo's vision to life. And it's also just fun, you know? She knows exactly what she wants, which can be a little intimidating at first, because I think almost every actor I've met, and I know I am my own worst critic as well, if we get a scene or we get a shot by 2 to 3, 3 to 4 takes, I'll go, are you sure? And that's where the communication really comes into play. She goes, yes, absolutely, we got it. I'm confident we got this. And because we've had that established rapport, I know that she's telling me the truth. You know, Zelda and I have very similar taste in film and television. And this project is the kind of movie I know that the both of us, when we were children, would turn on first and foremost. You can tell because we're both very inspired by what we're making. We're excited to see the work. We're excited to see the dailies. We're excited to look at how the shots are constructed. You know, it's, I think it's the difference between someone who's incredibly passionate about the content that they're making and someone that's, you know, taking a job. I mean, I really appreciate Diablo's voice. I think her voice is really, really evident within her writing, especially in her humor. It's very forward, it's deeply comedic, but it's really her voice that I love about the work that she does. It's so obviously her writing. It's almost bubblegum. It's like, it's loud. It's like pop art. It's like right there. I know it's hard for me to put into words exactly the way it makes me feel, but it's that feeling, that very obvious tone. I think his inability to speak was what really excited me just technically about playing Creature. And I knew it would be a heavy physical role, so I worked with a mime in Los Angeles for about 3-4 months. I would travel back and forth between Vancouver and LA, and I'd have little periods there. And then when we got on our hiatus in between the show that I'm filming, I worked every day with him for about a month and a half straight. Some things that Zelda and Diablo and I had talked about were that he was a pianist, so he was a professional pianist. He had some experience fencing. He was a lover. He was a big romantic. He died young, clearly, because when he comes back to life, he's young. He has some wounds that we had sort of addressed, were that at some point in his life he took his own life.
First of all, I'm a big Diablo Cody fan, so I was excited to read it for that reason. I will say that in every scene, I actually laughed out loud while reading it, which almost never happens to me. Like I said, the script is so strong and so tight, but there's also room for play that both Zelda encourages and Diablo was very excited to see. So I think that the combination of that just made it feel immediately, without ever having to say it, a very organic process. She has this razor sharp wit, and obviously tonally she can vary from something that's much more naturalistic and deeply human, always funny, but with that kind of, she plays this beautiful, like every key on the piano. And this one I found to be so fun and kind of in a totally different wheelhouse with all of those same qualities of something that was so much more heightened, and also her kind of just her impeccable eye for the 80s. There were so many things in reading the script that I just was like, I had forgotten about that, and I had forgotten about that. And then the second that I sat down and spoke with Zelda, within 1 minute, I thought, I want to help this person realize their vision. I found her to be incredibly precise and articulate and clearly just the leader of the ship in a beautiful way. Janet lives in Janet's world, for sure. Not a single other person's personality is in one iota of it. It is all Janet. But it inspired me sort of to run with Janet in the sense that she has created and curated a perfect world and a perfect family in her mind, and she cannot imagine how Lisa would not want to be a part of it. One of the things that I think this movie has is it pays homage to so many fun things in the 80s. So if you were around in the 80s, there'll just be a lot of hilarious moments. I also feel that we are in a moment where a lot is being pillaged from the 80s. But what I was going to say with this is that I find it pays homage beautifully. It has a lot of fun with the 80s, but it isn't derivative. It is something that is Zelda has a really unique eye, and I think we're going to get to see a movie that is very much from a singular filmmaker's point of view, which I love.
Well, I really love Taffy because she's such a fun character to play. She's very much like me. She's such a sweetheart. She's genuinely nice to everybody, no matter what the situation or circumstance is. And she loves life. I feel like she had such an amazing and just a happy upbringing, and so that's why she's very generous and genuine to everybody. But also, she can't help the fact that she is her mother's child, and so there are instances where she talks a bit too much or doesn't say the right thing sometimes, but it's not coming from a place of malice intent. It's just that this is what she grew up hearing, and this is like the kind of mindset that she grew up around, and so sometimes it comes out, but she doesn't mean it in a mean way. She is amazing. What I love about her is it's a very collaborative process. Whatever department it may be, whether it be hair, makeup, or like even the art department and everything, she allows them to kind of fill in their own space and do their own thing, as long as it's all going towards one direction, which I really found lovely about her. And also, like I said, she's also very generous. Like, she gives us the time to, prepare for a scene if that's what is needed. She's very generous with her own time. Like, before we started filming, I had a one-on-one talk with her, and I wanted to make sure that we were seeing eye to eye on everything, and that I fully understood what it was that she was expecting from me as an actress, and what she was expecting from Taffy. And so I really enjoyed that about her, and I really enjoyed that she's very honest with how she feels about each take, and that she won't move on until the actors are satisfied themselves.
I really enjoyed the dialogue. I think that's one thing that really got me interested in doing this film, because it's all very witty, and I like that in all the movies that she does, especially in this one, she always empowers the women in her characters, like Kathryn's character Lisa. She is a bit of a chaotic character, but she still is very empowered in her own way. As Taffy is empowered as well, and so is Janet. We're all very strong female characters, and at the same time, we also portray our characters in a very fantastical way, which makes it interesting and unique and not boring, I would say. And it's just fun because it's just such amazing writing. Like, some of the jokes I couldn't get at first because I didn't, not growing up in that time period, or like not even growing up here at all. Like, I didn't get the context of some of the jokes. But then as soon as like Zelda and the rest of the cast would explain it to me, it made it a lot more sense, and it became funny to me as well. So I feel like viewers who watch this movie will get a sense of like nostalgia, and they will be able to relate to each and every character. The thing is, I only ever got to work with him in one scene, which was a pretty crazy scene that we shot. But in that short period of time, I got to see like how professional he is at what he does. For such a young man, he is such a veteran in this industry, I would say. He started working when he was a baby, and that shows like all the experience that he's been through. He's constantly making sure that everybody is comfortable on set, that everybody is prepared, and he also knows how to set the tone and the energy in the room, which is very important from a lead. And offset, behind the scenes, he's such a nice and humble guy. The whole time, like I said earlier, he was really trying to help me warm up to everybody and try to get me to talk, which I really appreciated about him, because it can be very nerve-wracking working with, such big celebrities, such big names in the industry, and he never made me feel intimidated by him, which was very pleasant. Taffy and Lisa. So the thing is, there is a lot of context behind them because they are just new sisters. They grew up in different households, different upbringings, and are two completely different people. But the way that it is showcased or presented in the movie is in a very one-dimensional way, where like you have like the popular, cool sister that everybody sees as perfect, and then you have like the nerdy, quiet sister who everybody thinks is like a bit of a nuisance. But behind that, there's like such deeper context as to what they've experienced in their personal lives that makes them them, and their relationship is like Taffy clearly sees, like, she clearly understands what Lisa's been through, and she's very empathetic about that. But Lisa has gone through so much that I feel like she's kind of just shut herself out from the world and is not welcoming of anybody that wants to, really be there for her and love her. And even though Taffy is constantly trying to show her that, it's just hard to break through because she just feels like everybody's out to get her, or everybody just doesn't understand her. And that's what makes it so magical, I think, because it's very realistic, I would say. For people who have experienced having step siblings, it is very hard to like penetrate through the emotional walls, emotional barriers, I would say. And I guess that's really what this movie showcases.
When you've met the right fit in terms of a director for your project. And with Zelda, I just trusted my gut, and also obviously was impressed by the ideas that you brought to the table, that too. But for me, it is in many ways a feeling. We had a similar sensibility, that we wanted to tell the story in the same way. Yeah. I heard, other takes on this project, and I just think you knew what Lisa Frankenstein needed.
When I was so gung-ho that I remember being like, I'm going to immediately put a lookbook together. Kind of making this homage to what she had already put so much effort into in creating this world and these characters, and then kind of showing how I would want to flesh it out. That was a big part of, I think why we could meet even digitally and get along so well, as we kind of had this common language of film and references that we both loved. And all the hair. There's so many discussions of hair.
I have always been fascinated by the Frankenstein story. When I was growing up in the 80s, there were some sort of modern takes on the Frankenstein story, like Weird Science, but they always seem to be told from the male perspective. What if a man could create, the perfect woman? And I think even as a little girl, I thought to myself, okay, well, what would the female version be? And so for me, I had never really had an opportunity to tell a story at that time, and I was like, I gotta do it. That's the nostalgic sweet spot for me.
I really kind of dove deep into what was popular at that exact moment as well, if I could. And once we had Kathryn, too, I think a lot more of that started to come together, because you can start fleshing out the costumes and things, and that really, for me, helped me grasp the world we were going to make. Like, between Kathryn and Carla, that was like so much of the fashion and the hair and the things we wanted to approach. When I first read the script, I was so excited to, read a female character that was so unapologetically silly and unhinged and delightful, and she was still going through quite a lot. She was still, navigating grief and navigating young love and navigating being an outsider. But in those struggles for her, she was quite like effervescent and really, really fun to read. And all of that dialogue is on the page. Like, Lisa, in particular, was so specifically a woman that I would have related to at that age range, especially the conversations, because I will say there's so much, you'll read scripts and there's a lot of personality that the actors have to bring to things. Like, they kind of have to invent, how do I make a fully realized character out of what otherwise feels very bland? And there's like no blandness in any of the choices of these characters. They're so fully realized on the page. So like, actors, I felt like they especially really understood, even going in, the kind of person they were going to be. And it was so delightful to get to watch them fill up a larger-than-life character, as opposed to someone having to take a smaller character and build upon it. Like, they really just felt like they were in this big, wonderful space to like expand as far as they could.
And I love to hear that. And you directed those performances so beautifully, so it's just, watching this script come alive was a real privilege for me.
Visually, I had a couple that I really leaned into, and obviously there's certainly a love for Tim Burton that is present, but I did lean a lot more towards Almodovar's love of color. In Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, there's so much of this beautiful bright red, and we tried to bring some of that into the film. Like, the rabbit is this, what Paula and I were calling Almodovar red, and Lisa wears it a couple times, and the school has a lot of that, that I wanted to kind of pay homage to that. American Werewolf in London, the way that they would light night in the 80s was very specific. There was this kind of aquamarine blue that was so common in movies of that era, and I really wanted nighttime to have these highlights, these neon highlights that I think they fell out of favor in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they're starting to come back. And a movie I'm very, very fond of, Death Becomes Her, was one that I do think, especially both tonally and visually, was very informative for me. How they did the violence in the film as well, which, depending on how you shoot violence, can either be funny or incredibly harrowing. And I tried to lean towards that 80s and early 90s kind of camp violence that becomes a bit more, not slapstick, but it's just fun. There's something so fun about it, and it doesn't leave you being like horrified, I feel like, most of the time. When you're building a set, you can kind of play God and make exactly what you want. But anytime it's locations, which we really lucked out on, like the pink house was that's a real house. That someone lives there. We didn't build those things, but you have to find them, and so sometimes you have to be quite flexible. There was a different house we were going to use first, but their HOA wouldn't let us film there at very last minute, so we very, very kind of quickly had to put together finding a new house, and the pink one is what we wound up with. And it so perfectly suits the film, but you do have to be ready and on your toes to maybe not have some of that stuff go your way. The high school, too, we lucked out with, because most of the high schools were very, current day high school. And the one we found was so interesting and so different, with those big red lockers. We didn't paint that I just remember walking in and going, there's my favorite red. Okay, we're good.
Well, with Liza Soberano, her name says it all. She's really been holding it all in. She's really been keeping it inside. She has lost her mother and has kind of been discouraged from thoroughly processing that grief. Everybody just wants her to move on. And she understandably is not able to. You know, she's been deeply traumatized. Falling in love with this dead man, with this corpse, allows her to literally embrace her grief and find her way back to the land of the living. The theme of young women sort of coming into their power and perhaps being corrupted by it is something that I have visited time and time again in my work. And Liza is probably the most powerless, the most submissive lead that I've ever written. So it was especially satisfying to watch her become confident and murderous even.
We had quite a few chats about her wig.
Well, when you first told me that Kathryn was going to have this big curly red hair, I remember thinking, I'm here for it, but I have no idea how this is going to look. Yeah. And then when I saw it, I thought, this is it. Like, it is just the excess of the 80s, and so romantic, too. That color is just, like, beautiful.
Well, because Kathryn has quite glamorous, like, blonde hair. And I didn't want to do the thing that I think so many movies are prone to, which is, like, if they want the girl to be the unpopular loner girl, they'll give her, like, really bad bangs or something.
Yeah.
I wanted to give her, like, a full head of really luscious hair. It's just like, maybe she doesn't know how to style it, or maybe she's just kind of hasn't come into her own yet. It wasn't because she's, you know, we're not putting weird glasses and, like, ill-fitting clothes. It was like, she's cute. She just doesn't quite have a grasp on her confident womanhood yet. So the big red curls for me was a really fun addition to it, because I think her blonde hair just felt so put together, and I kind of wanted something that you could, like, electrify and be quite its own character.
Yeah.
Especially when she's, like, running and doing stuff. It's, like, bouncing everywhere. It was great.
Creature is a very chivalrous and romantic man, and he wants Liza. He's in love with her. And I think in a lot of ways, he also just wants to have human experiences again, such as, like, you know, we see him play the piano, and for me that was so important, this idea that he had a whole life, you know, before, that he was a composer, that he finds so much joy in being able to use his hands again. You know, we all know that life can be difficult, but at the same time, like, we're out here having these experiences, and it's a gift. And so for him to have a second chance at that, you have to wonder how electrifying that must be, no pun intended.
For me, I wanted him to be an homage to a different era of leading man as well, so we played a lot with, you know, Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. Just from a directing standpoint, to wrap my head around, it's why I had Cole go and do mime work. I wanted him to go and take mime classes, and he ended up loving it so much. That version of life that sometimes people fall into your lap, and sometimes they're not the thing you were looking for, and sometimes it's a complete mistranslation or misinterpretation. They still fulfill a really lovely thing for each other. I mean, also a very unhinged thing for each other, but I'm very fond of the idea that she comes to love him, and he's patient in waiting for that to happen. Because that's a huge part of what he kind of navigates in the movie, is being like, she'll come around if I just am listening and I'm here for her and I care about her.
They also have this kind of symbiotic relationship where he gets rid of people that she no longer needs in her life, and she in turn supplies him with body parts. Is it a dysfunctional relationship? Yes. But it's also, I think, quite beautiful.
Especially in her age range, I really wanted to find someone that not only could carry a whole film, but could do so with, like, so much humor and so much kind of willingness to go completely silly. And particularly this being a movie that is meant to be an homage and also take place in the 80s, I wanted someone who was willing to do that. And she was the only one I met that I really just knew immediately. She had this delightful, silly energy right off the bat. Like, she immediately introduced me to her 3 poodles. And she has a large one, a medium one, and a small one. And they're identical. So she has, like, Matryoshka doll poodles. And she was such a openly, earnestly sweet nerd that I was like, this works. I can see being able to push you to then be weirder and get bigger and bigger without you feeling ashamed of it. Because so many women are made to feel ashamed by being silly or being big and being funny, and she wasn't. It was such a perfect fit from the word go. Creature was always going to be an interesting part to cast because he's a male lead who doesn't speak. And I wasn't sure how many men were going to be gung-ho about that. But I've known Cole for years now. We've been really, really close friends for years. And I remember in getting this and being like, oh, this is Buster Keaton as a zombie, I just had an inkling that I think he would have enjoyed the challenge. And he certainly did. He was so excited.
Yeah, I was so enchanted by his enthusiasm from day one. I mean, he really was excited to play this role.
It's a romantic comedy that happens to have a murderous zombie in it.
Yeah.
Because horror, I do think it still falls under an umbrella. Horror is a really wide umbrella. There's just nothing scary, really, in this movie. So, yes, does it still fall into the horror world for me? Sure. But those elements weren't even things I had to really particularly worry about. Like, that was Cole being a zombie. That was them murdering some people. Like, that was on the page. The tone I ended up pursuing was more comedy and chemistry and the world that we were in, kind of having a, not feeling like this world. I did want to make it feel a little bit stepped outside of our day-to-day life, even the 80s day-to-day life.
So I love dabbling in multiple genres, but I don't usually have a choice because I have sat down and attempted to write straight dramas or straight horror more times than I can count, and every time it winds up veering into comedy. Because I can't help myself. Like, I just see the absurdity in everything. You got to go to the movies, you got to get your popcorn, you got to do it just like you would have in 1989 and watch this movie and enjoy the experience of seeing it with an audience, laughing together. And just, that's the joy of a film like this. Also, Zelda created such a beautiful, bright, immersive film that you want to see it on the big screen.
You're supposed to laugh and have these funny reactions to these deaths. They're silly on purpose, they're fun on purpose, they're raucous on purpose. And so seeing that with an audience is kind of the only way you'll get that experience.